Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In today's session, I'm gonna discuss the production curves first, then I'll be discussing cost curves, and then I'll be talking about my table, the one that I discussed in the previous class for which we are talking about the current content. Okay, let's start our discussion for the production curves. In short run, we know that units of capital are fixed. Let me make a column over here to depict the units of capital. This is K. It should remain fixed. Let me just adjust its font size. We have to provide fixed units of capital to each variable input so that a required level of output is obtained. Okay, in short run. So after reading the definition, we come to know that in short run, capital is an input which remain fixed. However, the units of labor, a variable input is labor. It can be varied. We can hire more units of labor on daily basis, on frequent basis, and we can condense or reduce the units of labor on daily basis. Let us assume that we are providing 10 units of capital to each unit of labor to produce our required level of output, and units of capital should remain fixed, whereas units of labor can vary. Okay, now look at this column, which is a column of marginal product of labor. I've just highlighted it with yellow shade to make you understand that this particular column is basically following a pattern of increasing and decreasing returns. So earlier we talked about laws of returns, and I told you people that laws of returns is basically based upon two laws. The one is called as law of increasing returns and the other is called as law of diminishing returns. So column of marginal product of labor is basically developed on the basis of law of increasing returns and law of decreasing returns. The first component that I've just highlighted with blue shade, from 10 to 60, you could see that the change in output, marginal product, is the ratio of change in total product of labor divided by change in units of labor, right? We all know about its formula, right? So the change in units of output is equals to 10. You could see from here, this is 10 and this is 0. So the difference, change is difference. 10 minus 0, 10 minus 0 should be equals to change in total product of labor, right? Comma, look at the units of labor. 1 minus 0 is equals to change in units of labor, right? So 10 minus 0 is change in units of total product of labor, while 1 minus 0 equals change in units of labor, right? So when you take its ratio, it should be 10 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0, right? So the answer should be 10. 10 divided by 1, answer should be 10, right? And if you could just scroll it down, you would come to know the entire column of total product of labor, right? But I'm just removing all this information from here. This 10 comes by taking the ratio of the change in total output to the change in units of labor, or to the change in units of variable input. Okay, how about this 35? It appears by following the same formula. And think about 60, it also appears by taking the change in total output and then change in units of labor. So you see, this 60 appears by following the same formula, right? But I'm just trying to make you clear that these three values are basically based upon law of increasing returns, right? I've just assigned these hypothetical values by borrowing concept from law of increasing returns. What happens within law of increasing returns? We know that marginal product of labor increases, right? Whereas marginal cost is decreasing within this concept. In production, we experience law of increasing returns. At the same time, in cost, we experience law of decreasing cost. So within the production, when law of increasing returns is appearing, the marginal product should increase, and it is increasing from 10, 35, 60, right? After 60, you could see the value, it starts decreasing. At 60, marginal product is maximum. Let me change its shade. And then if you could see the values, the marginal product is continuously decreasing in such a way that initially it becomes 50, then it reaches to 38.75, then 30, then 15, and eventually turn to 0. Let me change its shade as well. And besides 0, if you see that if we keep on increasing units of labor, the marginal product of labor becomes negative, right? If you could just see the value. So now look at the column of marginal product of labor. Initially, it is following law of increasing returns. The value of marginal product of labor is increasing from 10 to 35 to 60. These are just hypothetical values. You could assign any value of your choice, right? I've just assigned these values by following the concept of law of increasing return without taking any other thing in my mind that what should be the value. I've just mentioned the values randomly. I did not think about any other stuff that this law should be followed or this or that. I've just followed one particular concept, which should be law of increasing return. And right after law of increasing return, we experience a law which is called as law of decreasing returns, right? What happens in law of decreasing returns? Let me paste it over here. So within this, let me just merge these cells, and let me merge these three cells, right? So if you could just see, you would come to know that what is happening among the three values of marginal product of labor. Law of increasing returns is applying. From 50 to onward, minus 20, law of diminishing returns is applied, right? And within law of decreasing returns, MPL has, what is happening here, MPL is greater than 0, right? Then MPL is 0, and then MPL is less than 0. We can experience three particular phases of MPL, right? If you could see, we are witnessing three phases of MPL. From 50 to 15, you could see that MPL is greater than 0. And at this particular red cell, the pink cell, you could see that MPL has reached to 0. And right after this pink cell, if you could see the next values, the MPL has turned to negative, right? These are the three phases what we are experiencing within law of diminishing returns. But within law of increasing returns, MPL is greater than 0 and it is increasing, okay? If somebody who does not know about the column of total product of labor, how should we calculate this column? How can we calculate it? All of you people are quite aware about the concept of calculating total utility when you are given marginal utility. I'm just following the same concept by considering the previous value of total utility and adding the current value of marginal utility, right? So it was happening in case of theory of consumption, or you could see that in utility maximizing principles case. In law of diminishing marginal utility, we used to follow these concepts. But within production, what I'm doing is I'm just considering the previous value of total output of labor and adding the current value of marginal product of labor, and then obtaining the current value of total product of labor, right? It is 10. Think about when we are employing second unit of labor, what we need to do, we need to take previous value of total output of labor, then we need to add the current value of marginal product of labor. 10 plus 35, it should be 45. So it is 45. Then 45 is the previous output, output which is given upon the previous input, and then output marginal product of labor at current unit of labor, it is 60. So 45 plus 60, it should be 105. So output is 105. Okay, and let me continue this particular table, and you'll obtain the column of total output of labor. How do we find out average product of labor? What we need to do, we just need to divide the total output of labor upon units of labor. I've just selected 10, then divided it upon units of labor to obtain 10 divided by 1, answer should be 10. 45 divided by 2, it should be 22.5. 105 divided by 3, it should be 35, right? And let us continue this particular column, right? So here you could see that the entire values have been found for average product of labor. Let me reduce it to 2 decimals so that no confusion can be experienced. Okay. Uh, After discussing these concepts, let me draw a graph for all these three columns. I've just made this graph for you people to make you understand. If you could just look at the values, let me just split these columns or this graph into two graphs. Let me just remove this from here and make a new graph for you people. uh, I've selected these two columns. Open up insert scatter diagram, and this you can see that this is a graph of total product of labor. You could see that along the vertical axis we have units of output, and along the horizontal axis we have units of labor, right? Let me just make you clear about it. Let me add labels. I've just added the both ones. I guess this appears relatively good. And let me adjust its font size. Okay. Okay, ji. Now let's look at the values. When you employ 0 units of labor, the output should be 0. When you employ 1 unit of labor, you could see that from the graph. At 1 unit of labor, the output is 10. At 2 units of labor, we have 45 units of output. At 3 units of labor, we have 105 units of output. At 4 units of labor, we have 155 units of output. At 6 unit of labor, this is the information. Let me highlight it for you people. This yellow shade and this yellow shade. We have two yellow shades upon this graph. When we employ 6 units of labor, you could see that level of output is 223.75. But if you could look at the value of 7th unit of labor, it is 238.75, right? So it means if you compare 223 with 238, we come to know that 223 is not the maximum output. Therefore, I should unhighlight this particular information. And after looking at this value, we can see that the level of output is 238.75. Now let's move towards the next value. At 8th unit of labor, we could see that it is again 238.75, right? So level of a maximum output is an output at which we can see that the very next output after this particular output, it should come down. But if you look at the units of output at 7th unit of labor, it is 238.75. But at 8th unit of labor, the level of output is 238.75. So at 7th unit of labor, the output is not maximum output, because right after the next unit of labor's output, we could see that it remains the same. So this value can never be considered as maximum level of output. So we must unhighlight this information again. Now look at the units of labor 8 and level of output 238.75, and very next unit of labor is 9, and at 9th unit of labor the level of output is 228.75. So after comparing 228.75 level of output with 238.75 level of output, we come to know that the yellow shaded level of output is highest level of output as compared to the all other level of outputs, right? So we can say that at 8th unit of labor, whatever the level of output we are obtaining, it should be a maximum level of output. But we are little bit confused in a sense that we are not given the value of marginal product of labor. Remember my words, when we need to declare a total output as to be a maximum level of output, at this point the level of marginal output should be 0, right? So let me draw the columns of MPL and APL for you people to discuss its relationship. Now, if you could just look at the graph, you come to know that, oh, this is really a funny graph. But you don't need to worry at all. The reason is that we are gonna just correct this graph. Why it is in a way like it? Because it is not following any particular definition or any specific features. Let me add the name for the series at here. It should be um average product of labor. Along the x-axis, we must plot or we must consider units of labor, right? Along the x-axis, we must plot the values of units of labor. And along the y-axis, we must plot the values of APL. We must plot the values of APL. Okay. So when I apply this particular information, you could see the graph of APL. It is little bit improved. Now let me add another series with title MPL, and along the x-axis let me add the units of labor for it, and along the y-axis let me add the values for MPL. Okay. and let me press OK. When I've just pressed OK, you could see the values of MPL, and let me press OK over here. I've just pressed OK over here. Now look at the values. Okay. This is the information. Look at, let me just add labels over here just to make you clear that what is happening. Format data series, no. Format data labels. Let me add the X values as well, above or below. If I could go below, above, okay. Let me just press it OK. Now just look at the values. When you are employing, this is the information which is quite important for us. Let me just highlight it for you people. The one that I've just highlighted, let me adjust its font size from 10 to 12 for the sake of viewers, so that they can view or visualize this information. If you just look at the value of total output of labor at 8th unit of labor, it is 238.75, and I was saying that it should be a maximum level of output. If you could just look at the value of MPL at 0 unit of labor, sorry, at 8th unit of labor, you could see that the value of MPL is 0, right? The one that which I've just highlighted. In the below graph, in the second panel of the graph, you could see that the units of labor are 8, but the MPL is 0. Now let me highlight this information over here. Look at this information, the one which I've just highlighted in the table, right? At 8th unit of labor, total output is 238.75 and level of marginal product is 0. So the total output becomes maximum at a point where marginal product of labor becomes 0. Whenever marginal product of labor is greater than 0, the total output of labor is increasing. When marginal product of labor becomes negative, total output of labor starts decreasing. This is the relationship between total output of labor and marginal product of labor. If you could just look at the relation between marginal product of labor and average product of labor, both marginal product and average product of labor are increasing, but marginal product of labor is increasing more than increase in average product of labor. In the initial case, you could see that MPL remains greater than APL. Okay, let me just adjust it for you people, right? At this point where where average product of labor has reached to maximum, here APL has reached to maximum, it is equals to MPL, right? You could see the value. Okay, where if you could see the column, here is the value, the one which I've just highlighted within the table, right? At here we are applying or we are using 5 units of labor. At 5th unit of labor, you could see that APL has reached to maximum and it is equals to MPL. This is the second point that we have over here, right? Let us remove this. Let us remove this just to make you understand, so that nobody should get worried that what is happening. Okay, so after this point, if you could just see that what is happening after this point, let me highlight it as point number 1. This is point number 2 in production. And right after this, if you could just see that the point number 3 is emerging, which is saying that MPL has become less than APL, right? So these are the three relations which are happening. I'm not discussing the stages of production at here. That is another important concept. But at here, I'm just discussing these 3 points. After discussing these 3 points, I'm going to take you people to the concepts of cost. Let me just let you know that these are the concepts of costs. When we employ 0 units of variable input, the output should be 0. And then we are increasing units of labor and level of output is also increasing. Fixed cost a firm incurs against its fixed inputs. The expenditures made by a firm upon its fixed inputs is called as fixed cost, and the expenditures which a firm make upon its variable inputs are called as variable cost, right? So at here we have assumed that the value should be 320. Whatever the level of output, it does not matter. The fixed cost should remain fixed. It should not vary at all. So at here we have just assumed that the value for fixed cost is 320 and it will remain fixed. The reason is that the fixed cost does not change. These refers to the fixed expenditures of any firm, right? And what about variable cost? These are the expenditures of a firm which a firm is making upon its variable inputs, right? So these are the different values against this level of output. Okay, when we add both variable and fixed cost, let me show you a formula over here. The total cost is the sum of total fixed cost and total variable cost, right? So what we have done is that we have added both fixed cost and variable costs to obtain total cost, right? So when you add 320 with 0, you will come to know about 320 at 0 unit of level of output. When you add 300 and 320, the answer should be 620, right? 300 plus 320 should be 620. And then 400 plus 320 should be 720, then 770, and so on. Okay, and after obtaining the column of total cost, these are the three concepts of cost: total fixed cost, total variable cost, and total cost. These are the three families of total cost curves. And then there comes three members of average cost curves: average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost. So there are three family members who belongs to total term. There are three members that belongs to average term, and there is one member from cost curves is belong to marginal term, right? So total fixed cost, total variable cost, and total costs are the three members that belongs to total term. Average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost are the three members that belongs to average family. And then marginal cost belongs to the term marginal. So average fixed cost is obtained by dividing total fixed cost upon output produced by a firm. Then average fixed cost is obtained by dividing total variable cost upon output produced. Then average total cost is obtained by dividing total cost upon output, right? These are the three concepts of average term. Let me condense the entire information up to two decimals to make convenient for reading or visualizing. Okay, right after defining the formulas, let me find out the values for all these three average terms. Dividing total fixed cost upon output, 320 divided by 1, answer is 320. Then 320 divided by 2, answer is 160. Oh, okay. When you divide 320 upon 2, the answer is 160. Then 320 divided by 3, answer is 106. Similarly, when you divide 300 upon 1, the answer should be 300. When you divide 400 upon 2, the answer should be 200. When you divide 450 upon 3, the answer should be 150, right? Similarly, 620 should be divided upon 1, answer should be 620. 720 divided by 2, the answer should be 360. Then 770 divided by 3, the answer should be 256, right? And when we just scroll down the entire three concepts, the remaining values for all the three average members have been obtained. Think about marginal product of labor. It is change in total output. 620 minus 320, answer is 300 divided by output. It is 1 minus 0, right? Change in total cost divided by change in output is called as marginal cost. Look at the next value. 720 minus 620 divided by 2 minus 1, change in total cost divided by change in output. The answer is 720 minus 620 equals 100, divided by 2 minus 1 equals 1. So 100 divided by 1 is answer is 100. And let me just find out the next value. 770 minus 720 equals 50. 3 minus 2 equals 1. So 50 divided by 1, answer should be 50. Okay. And let me just scroll it down, right? So you have come to know that these are the 7 family cost curves that we discuss into short run, because in short run we know that some inputs are fixed, right? And some inputs are variable. So in short run we come across fixed cost as well as variable cost. What is the reason behind it? That in short run we have some fixed inputs with us for producing our output, and we have some variable inputs with us to produce our required level of output, right? After discussing these concepts, I've just highlighted these four, I mean these three main family members of the costs to understand the further concepts, right? Just look at this column. You could come to know that the average average variable cost is in U shaped. Just let me highlight for you people. The green shaded curve is showing average variable cost. It is, if you just refer, if you relate it with English letter U, so you could come to know that average variable cost is in shape of U, right? Let me just mention it for you people. So average variable cost is in green shade. The purple shade is also referring to average total cost. And if you could just continue making its values or draw a graph, you could come to know that average total cost is also in U shape, right? Average total cost is also in U shape. But if you could just see the graph of marginal cost, it is in hockey shape. You might have seen a hockey, which is a national game of Pakistan, and a hockey marginal cost curve is like a hockey shape, right? So you let me just after defining there, or after just informing you about its shapes, now look at some further concepts. If you could just see the values, the point where average total cost is becoming minimum, it is equals to marginal cost. It is 170. The point where average variable cost is minimum, it should be equals to marginal cost, but here we are have a difference like 3.33, but it should be equals to, in conceptual understanding, 116.67 from average variable cost, it should be equals to 116.67 from marginal cost. But here it is not slightly equal. The difference is 3.33. Since the values were taken hypothetically, that is why it is not coming equal to each other. But in reality, the point where average variable cost is minimum, marginal cost is always equal to the minimum point of average variable cost. So it is slightly equal. If you could just see this particular value, there is a little difference. Let me just add label over here, right? Let me just format this label by adding the value for marginal cost as well. So you could see that, no, it, since it is taking the other value as well. Okay, just let me unhighlight it and let me take the value for marginal cost, right? So marginal cost is 120 at here, but average variable cost is 116, right? So it is not equal. Basically it should be equals. The point where average variable cost becomes minimum, it is always equals to marginal cost. But I'll be making another table. Within that table, I'm going to show you that both are equal, right? And before the minimum points, you could see that average variable cost is higher than that of marginal cost, but average total cost is greater than that of average variable cost, and average variable cost is greater than marginal cost. Then second point appears, a point where average total cost is minimum, it is equals to marginal cost. And in the third case, marginal cost is greater than average total cost, and average total cost is greater than average variable cost. Average variable cost and average total cost are moving parallel. They are closer to each other. They are moving parallel. They can never be equal to each other. The reason is that the difference between average total cost and average variable cost is equals to average fixed cost, right? So because of average fixed cost, these two curves can never be equal to each other, right? So the difference between these two curves, the gap, you could see that it is only because of average fixed cost. Now let's look at the last values. This is the last value. Look at the values, 217 and 249, right? 217 and 249, and the difference is 32. If you see that this 32 is from average fixed cost, so you would see that average total cost and average variable cost will be quite closer to each other, but they will never become equal to each other, only because of average fixed cost. The difference will be because of average fixed cost, the average total cost and average variable cost can never become equal to each other. After discussing the 7 family cost curves in short run with you people, now let's move towards our required table, which is basically determining optimal employment of variable input in short run. Now, let us assume that we are given some units of fixed input like capital, and we are also aware that by increasing units of variable input from 0 to onward, we will obtain a resultant output QX. QX is referring to total product of labor. Okay. And if you could just see this value of marginal product of labor, I've just told you that I've just obtained this column because of generating this column by following the concept of law of increasing returns and law of diminishing returns. From 7 to 10 and from 10 to 15, you could see that the MPL is increasing. It is because of law of increasing returns. And from 15 to 12 to 11 to 10 to 7 to 4, the value of marginal product of labor is decreasing. It is because of law of diminishing returns. I've just taken some values from marginal product of labor. I've not taken it to reduce to 0 and then turn to negative. That component of marginal product of labor I've just ignored to understand the concept of this particular table. This total output of labor is obtained again by following the same concept, adding the previous value of total output labor in current value of marginal product of labor. 0 plus 7 equals 7, right? And then 7 plus 7 plus 10 equals 17, and so on. 17 plus 15 equals 32, and so on, right? So the output column is obtained by adding the previous unit of total output and current unit of marginal output. We have obtained the column of total output. Okay, the price of X, it is given 2.86. Why it is fixed? It is only because of a market structure like perfect competition. Since we are talking about a firm which is operating within perfect competition, that is why the price is fixed. What is happening in perfect competition? It is a market structure. It is a type of a market within which extremely large number of sellers are operating their business, and at the same time we have extremely large number of buyers as well. Both are basically buying and selling at one fixed price. The product that they are handling or dealing with, the product is basically a homogeneous product. So within perfect competition, a firm always use or supply homogeneous product, and buyers always buy homogeneous product. What do we mean by the term homogeneous product? A product which follows the same attributes, a product which carries the same features, like its brand is same, its packaging is same, its quality is same, right? A product with same quality, same packaging, same labeling, same shape, everything is same brand. So a product is homogeneous. When any attribute of the firm is differing or it is varying, then a product is a heterogeneous product. Remember my words, a product when it is following same features or carrying same feature, a product is said to be homogeneous product. And for homogeneous product, a price can never be changed, right? When you would change price for your product, what is gonna happen? The buyer will move towards a firm which is offering less price. So relatively, a firm which is charging high price for a homogeneous product, it will lose its customer share. Resultantly, its revenue and profit shares will come down. Moreover, when you are supplying homogeneous product, then a price will remain same. There is no incentive for new other firm which is entering into the market. It can never set its own price. It has to accept the market price, whatever is existing into market. then a new firm will have to follow the price which is existing in the market. If it is going to set a new price, then it should be thrown out of the market. The reason is that if a new firm is going to charge a new price which is not similar to the market price, if it is expensive, then it will have to go from the market. And in case if it is less than that of the market price, the remaining firms will not allow that firm to charge the less price, right? So ultimately, uh, a new firm will have to accept the current market price, right? It has no right to determine its own price. Why? What is the reason? Because it is supplying the homogeneous product. A firm can never determine its price lesser than that of lesser than that of the market price in case of perfect competition. Why? Because a firm does not have any incentive, so price will remain fixed into perfect competition. So let us multiply 2.86 with 0 to obtain the column of total revenue. Now let me just show you this information. When you multiply 2.86 with 0, you obtain answer as 0. When you multiply 2.86 with 7, the answer should be 20.02. And let me carry on all the information. So you could come to know that this is the column of average, total revenues column. Total revenue is the product of price with quantity, and it also refers to the sales for a firm, right? Okay. What is going to happen after the column of total revenue? A column of average revenue is obtained. How it is obtained? By dividing total revenue upon output. Now let me tell you about this information. When you divide 20.0702 upon 7, the answer is 2.86. When you divide 48.62 upon 17, the answer is 2.86. When you divide 91.52 upon 32, the answer is 2.86. Why the answer remains 2.86? Now look at this formula. Now let us open total revenues information. It is price into quantity, and then write this information in this form: price multiplied by quantity divided by quantities. When quantity will be divided with quantity, the answer is left, which is price multiplied by 1, and price multiplied by 1 equals price, right? So average revenue is always equals to price, no matter whether you are operating in perfect competition or other than perfect competition, right? Whenever you are operating within perfect competition or other than perfect competition, price and average revenue is always equals. But other than perfect competition, price and average revenue are equal, but they are not equal to marginal revenue. In what cases? Other than perfect competition. But in perfect competition, price and average revenue are equal, but they are also equal to marginal revenue. We'll go to the marginal revenues column in just few seconds. Just wait for a few seconds, and I'm gonna discuss that concept as well. Now look at the column of marginal revenue. How do we obtain it? By taking the change in total revenue divided by change in output. Now let's find it out. Change in total revenue, which what is the change? 20.02 minus 0. This is change in total revenue when you are using 1 unit of labor, divided by change in output. At 1 unit of labor, what is the level of output? It is 7, minus at previous unit of labor it is 0, right? So change in revenue divided by change in output equals 2.86. So 20.02 minus 0, answer is 20.02. 7 minus 0, answer is 7. So 20.02 divided by 7, answer is 2.86. Now look at the second cell. At 2 units of labor, the total revenue a firm is earning is 48.62 minus 20.02 divided by 17 minus 7. Look at the answer. It is again 2.86. When you employ 3 units of labor, the total revenue is 91.52 minus 48.62 is the revenue at second unit of labor, divided by the output at third unit of labor is 32 minus the output at second unit of labor is 70. So 91.52 minus 48.62 divided by 32 minus 17, answer is 2.86. Let me drag it down for you guys. We have already read about the column for average product of labor and column for marginal product of labor, right? So how do you calculate average product of labor? By dividing output upon units of labor, right? When you divide 7 upon 1, answer should be 7. When you divide 17 upon 2, the answer should be 8.5. When you divide 32 upon 3, the answer should be 10.67, and so on. Okay, and so on. Okay, so after calculating APL, now let's calculate MPL. MPL is change in total output divided by change in units of labor. So 7 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0, right? This is MPL, and the remaining values can also be found by using the same concept, right? Okay. After looking at this table, now look at the point that I already explained you guys, that the point when APL becomes maximum, it is always equals to MPL. So it is following the same concept, right? So it is happening in our case. Now let's move towards the next column, which is MRPL. How do we obtain MRPL? The formula for MRPL represents marginal revenue product of labor. It is obtained by multiplying MPL with MR. So when you multiply MR and MPL, the answer is equals to MRPL, right? So 10 multiplied by 2.86 equals 28.6, and so on, right? How about value of marginal product of labor? How do we find it out? We can find it out by multiplying MPL with price. When you multiply MPL with price, which is 2.86, you will obtain VMPL, right? Look at the second cell. At second cell, MPL equals 10, multiply by 2.86, it should be 28.6. And let's drag it down for you guys. Remember my words. In case of perfect competition, MRPL and VMPL both are equal to each other. MRPL and VMPL are equal to each other only in case of perfect competition. After discussing these two columns of MRPL and VMPL, now let's move towards wages and interest rate. These are the two informations which will be given to you people. In perfect competition, we, from we, I mean all the firms which are operating within perfect competition, they will be hiring a homogeneous input like labor. So the wages of the workers will remain same. Resultantly, The value 20 appears over here. Why I've just mentioned 20? Because it is given in the information. The information from which we are handling this particular activity, in that statement it is given. Let me show you that particular word file so that you could come to know that why this 20 is coming. Now let me open up that particular information for you guys. So this is the page that is given. Now let me read this statement for you people. Let in short run, from short run we know that there are some inputs which are fixed and there are some inputs which are variable. An organization provides 5 units of fixed input. When we read this 5, we come to know that the units of capital should be equals to 5, as in this particular table you could see that units of labor are 5. These are not changing, right? 5 units of fixed input like capital to each unit of variable input. ठीक है, इसके बाद देखें जी, variable input like labor in order to produce its output. The firm plans to sell its output at price 2.86 per unit. So we are also given price, and that is 2.86. Since it is perfect competition, so price will not change at all. The firm buys labor at wages 20 rupees per unit. So wages are also given, which are 20. And capital at interest. So the price of capital is also given, which is 2, right? So these are the informations which are given to us into this table. That is why we have just assumed that the wages should be 20. So wages are 20 and these are not changing. The price of capital, these are 2, and these two columns are given to us within the statement. Now let's find out the fixed cost. The formula for fixed cost is price of, since the capital is the fixed input, so what you need to do to find out the value for fixed cost, you just need to mention that this is the price of capital multiply by the units of capital. Units of capital are 5. So when you multiply 2 with 5, the answer should be 10. Again, look at this 2. When you multiply this 2 with the fixed units of capital, the answer should be 10. So it will remain fixed. It will be equals to 10. Now look at the column of variable input. If you would like to find out variable cost, how do you find the value for the variable cost? You need to multiply price of variable input, which is wages. These are 20, with the units of labor or variable input. It is labor. So when you multiply 20 with 0, the answer should be 0, right? When you multiply 20 with unit of labor 1, the answer is 20. When you multiply this 20 with unit of labor 2, the answer should be 40, and so on, right? So you have obtained total variable cost. Now look at the column of total cost. Total cost can be obtained by adding total variable cost and total cost. You will obtain total cost column. You add variable cost, which is equals to 20, plus fixed cost, which is 10. 20 plus 10 equals 30, and so on. Average fixed cost is again obtained by dividing total fixed cost upon variable upon output. So let me just remove few values for you. Total fixed cost is 10, dividing it upon level of output, which is 7. So answer is 1.429. Then again dividing 10 upon level of output 17. The answer is 0.58. Then dividing 10 upon the next level of output, which is 32. So you see we have obtained some values. Now let's drag the entire values to obtain the column for average fixed cost. Now let's condense the information up to two decimals. Similarly, we obtain the information for average variable cost by dividing total variable cost upon level of output, then 40 upon 17, then 60 upon 32. Here you could see that we have obtained three values. Now let's drag the entire information to obtain the remaining values, and you can see that we have obtained the further values. Similarly, we can obtain average total cost column. Now let me remove the first three values. There are two formulas for finding average total cost. The one way is that you can divide total cost upon level of output. The other way is that you can add average fixed cost and average variable cost to obtain average total cost. The answer should be same. The answer will not be different, right? Okay, now let's remove the other information to find out the other values. The answer will remain same. The answer will not be different, right? So here we have found the value for average total cost. Okay, now let's move towards marginal cost. We are left with three columns. Just stay with me so that I can complete all these columns, and then the discussion related to these columns will be left. We'll be discussing the remaining discussion on Thursday. Probably Thursday would be the last session of our course, and within on Thursday I'll be explaining the left concepts. Whatever we are left with, we are going to discuss these concepts upon Thursday. So before going to Thursday's class, I just want to discuss all these columns so that we'll be discussing theoretically on Thursday rather to talk about these tabulated information. So let me remove the first three cells of marginal cost. We know that it is change in total cost 30 minus 10. It is 20 divided by change in output. It is 7 minus 0, right? The answer is 2.857. Okay. Now at second cell, change in output, change in total cost is 50 minus 30. It is again 20 divided by 17 minus 7. The answer is 2. At third cell, if you could see that 70 minus 50, it is again 20. Now let's divide it upon change in output, which is 32 minus 17. The answer is 1.33, right? Now let's remove the remaining information. After dragging these cells, we'll obtain the entire column for marginal cost. Okay, so this is a column of marginal cost, but from here I'll just let me explain you people. 1.82 is showing that here average variable cost is minimum. After looking at the column of average total cost, this 2, the value 2 is showing us that it is minimum. I told you earlier while discussing the concepts of 7 families of cost curves, I told you there that when average variable cost becomes minimum, it is always equals to marginal cost. So at 1.82, you could see that it is equals to marginal cost. I've just highlighted over here within this cell. If you could see that average variable cost, when it is minimum, it is always equals to marginal cost. Look at this column to look at the column of average total cost. When average total cost has reached to minimum, it is again equal to marginal cost, right? So 2 equals 2. The point where average total cost is minimum, it is again equal to marginal cost. Now let's move towards the next columns. Total profit and marginal profit. Total profit can be obtained by subtracting total revenue from by subtracting total cost from total revenue. So subtracting cost from revenue, you obtained profit. Revenue is 48.62 minus cost is 50. So the difference is minus 1.38 and so on, right? Look at the column for marginal profit. Marginal profit is change in total profit divided by change in output. This is the one formula. The other is that what you need to do, you need to subtract marginal cost from marginal revenue. We have marginal revenue 2.86 minus marginal cost 2.86. So the difference is 0. Then marginal revenue is 2.86 minus marginal cost is 2, marginal profit is positive, and so on. So at initial unit of output, you see that the total profit is negative, but marginal profit is 0. You did not stop producing your level of output. After that, you could see that your marginal profit is positive, but your total profit is negative. So again, you will not stop producing your level of output since the marginal profit is positive, and afterwards it is increasing, and from the third unit of labor you could see that the level of total profit has increased to 21.52, and it is increasing further, and the moment when marginal profit has become 0, the total profit has become 55.92. So remember my words, when marginal profit becomes 0, the total profit will always become maximum over there. Up till here, I'm gonna close my lecture, and the rest information we are gonna discuss on the next class. Till here, thank you very much for your patience. If you have queries, just raise your hand and I'm here to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Stay blessed. Have a nice time.